الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين رضي الله تعالى عنه وعن كافة المؤمنين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Alhamdulillah. For those of you who were with us last time, welcome back. For those of you whom this is your first time, welcome. My name is Khalil Abdul Rashid. This is a class on the text and the content of the text, laws of the heart. This class was part of a dual, sort of a part one and a part two. Part one of this was The Soul of Islam. It was a green book. Most of us, or some of us, maybe half of us, not even half of us, some people in here have read it with me. We have copies here in the IC if you're interested in a copy of The Soul of Islam. Khalil has several copies in his office. You're welcome to take one. I highly recommend that you read it, although it is not necessary for you to have read the first book in order to go into this book, but it is a very good foundation and certainly provides the premise for what we are doing. This book is $20, so you can give the money to Khalil, inshallah ta'ala. The cost is $20, it goes for the book. I have 40 copies with me now, and I have many more in the office, so if everyone does not get a copy, do not get upset. We'll definitely get you copies next week, inshallah. This is all I could carry with me today. So I apologize if it's not enough, but we have more. It's not a problem. I actually have this. So this book, first of all, is a translation of an Arabic text written by my teacher, Sheikh Muhammad Amin Er. And it's Arabic, because he writes in Arabic, although he's Kurdish by ethnicity, but because of his training, and this is the language of our tradition, he writes in Arabic. And so the title of the Arabic text, the original Arabic, is called Fiqh al-Batin. Most of you know the term fiqh to mean law or Islamic law. Al-Batin is the Arabic word to mean the inner, the inside. You have two words. One is zahir, which means external. Its opposite is batin, B-A-T-I-N. Batin, which means inner or internal. Okay. The Prophet it's narrated that the Prophet ﷺ said, everything has a zahir and a batin. Everything has an external component to it and an external component and internal meaning to it. And there's even a reported narration like this about the commentary of the Quran, that every verse in the Quran, the meaning of every verse in the Quran, for every verse in the Quran, there's a batin, there's a zahir and a batin. There's an external meaning and an internal, sort of deeper spiritual meaning. Okay? Everything has an external and an internal component to it. Even these are names that are names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Amongst the 99 names, one of the names of Allah is al-Zahir, the one who is externally manifest, and al-Batin, the one that's inwardly hidden. Okay? So Batin is a reference or a meaning or an indication to things that are hidden on the inside. Fiqh al-Batin, the fiqh of the inside. There's laws governing the external world, and then there's spiritual laws, or system if you will, that govern the internal world. And this internal world is a reference for the heart. of the human being. So the word fiqh is a reference for laws, if you will, for lack of a better translation. Batin is a reference for the heart. It's the title of the book, Laws of the Heart. And so through this reading, just like if you study law in general, you study different topics, different concepts, and how these concepts relate one to another. In this book here, we'll study the topics and concepts of purifying the heart and developing and cultivating spirituality in Islam. So fiqh al-batin, laws of the heart. How many of you have registered for this class? Have actually registered. Okay. So those that have registered, the books go to you first. Then those that have not registered, we can all fight it out, and whoever survives, you can get the rest of the books, okay? Inshallah. So I'll pass them around. Actually, can we get a brother to take care of the brothers and the sister? Take care of the sisters, inshallah. And raise your hand if you've registered, if we can get a sister to do it. And then those that haven't registered, then we'll give you books, inshallah ta'ala. As much as we have here. And if you don't get a book, do not worry. I'll bring you one next week, inshallah ta'ala. Looks like we'll have enough to go around, inshallah. Aaron, can you just pass these out to sisters who don't have their hands raised? Inshallah. Those books, these, and so Hamza, can you just take care of the brothers, inshallah.
We can get one.
And then if you don't have a book, please raise your hand so that everyone sees that you do not have a book. If we're covered, then we're covered. Alhamdulillah, are we good? Okay, so alhamdulillah. All right. Okay, alhamdulillah. Since we are beginning, it is also necessary to clarify our intentions, especially when dealing with a topic like this. One of my teachers said, everything in Islam can be summed up to one purpose. You guys have Arik? You guys need books? And that one objective, that one purpose is, or could be stated, to achieve sincerity, ikhlas. Everything in Islam boils down to one thing, ikhlas, sincerity. You do what you do for the right reason, to get close to Allah, ikhlas, and only Allah, not for any other extra purpose. So at the end of the day, any course you take, any class you take, any book you read regarding the subject of spirituality in Islam, purification of the heart, tahara, tazkiyah, tasawwuf, tarbiyah, whatever name you want to call it, the ultimate objective is to take the human being from where they are, wherever they are, and to move them along a continuum to achieve ikhlas. Imam al-Ghazali had a very powerful statement which is born out of the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which is narrated by one of the wives of the Prophet, Habiba. So Habiba, she narrates the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna al-aish, aish al-akhirah. That the real life is the afterlife. The real life isn't the afterlife. It does not mean that this life is a joke. It does not mean that. That means the reality of what's going to happen. The real permanent life is the next life. It's a hadith. And from this, one of our great scholars in our legacy, Imam al-Ghazali, he said that no matter what a person's situation is, it doesn't matter if a person has finished formal education or not. In other words, it doesn't matter how many PhDs you have, how much schooling you had, etc. He said the intelligent person is not the person who has succeeded in going the distance in formal education. That's not the intelligent person. The intelligent person is the one that knows and understands that this is not the life. This is not the ultimate life. This is not the only life. It's that person who understands that and works in accordance with that. It doesn't mean you neglect this life, but it means you put priorities, you rearrange your priorities accordingly. So that's what these laws of the heart, train us to be able to do. Okay? We have a couple people that just walked in, so Hiram, could you pass these books? 3 and 2 brothers. No, let's just walk there. It's not right. Okay, so in that regard, I want to transmit to all of you the niyyah, the intention for learning. And it's very important that that we clarify our intentions, that we purify our intentions to do what we're doing for the sake of Allah. Okay, and so there's a beautiful niyyah, very beautiful intention that my teachers taught me that I want to pass on to you. And at the beginning of every class, inshallah ta'ala, we will renew our intentions and clarify our intentions. Inshallah, next week, I'll have these written down for you, inshallah ta'ala. So those of you that would like to memorize it in Arabic, you'll be able to memorize it in Arabic. Those of you that would prefer to memorize it in English, you'll be able to do it in English, inshallah ta'ala. Okay? But for now, I'll dictate it to you. Next week, I'll bring it, inshallah ta'ala. And so the intention begins like this. Of course, it starts with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. So at the beginning of everything you do, that you care about, that you have concern about, that's a priority for you, you need to start with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, anything that you do that you care about, anything that you embark upon that is important to you, if you don't say Bismillah when you do it, that thing is cut off or diminished from blessings. Right? So things that you do that you care about, you start with the Bismillah. So it begins with the Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and you begin like this. I intend to learn and then to teach. Because even if you don't want to be a teacher, your existence in a community renders you a teacher, whether you realize it or not. Your conduct, the way you behave with people is a statement about Islam, is a statement about Muslims, and is a statement about your being a member of the community of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So you teach whether you like it or not, whether you're in a formal setting or not. So I intend to learn and to teach, and to remind myself and to remind others. So there's this duality. I intend to learn and to teach. To remind myself, that's why we're here, tadakkur, to remind myself and to remind others. To benefit myself and to benefit others. To motivate others to hold on to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. To motivate others, to motivate myself and others to hold on to the Book of Allah and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. To guide myself and others to good things. To guide myself and others to good things, and to show the way to righteousness. To show the path of righteousness. You show this through your examples. You show the path of goodness by the way you speak to people. You show the path of goodness by the way you interact with people. You show the path of goodness by the way you conduct yourself with people. Okay, it doesn't mean that you become a teacher, but you are reforming yourself. To show the path to goodness, and I intend to do all of this only for the pleasure of Allah and to get close to Allah and to seek His reward. That's the intention. I intend to do all of this, seeking the pleasure of Allah, the nearness of Allah, the nearness to His presence, to His love, and His reward. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? So this intention, you should keep it with you. And in reality, any class that you attend, this is the intention that you should say going into class. And you just don't like walk into class and sit down. So any knucklehead can do that. Any normal, average person can go into a class and sit down. You want your behavior to go in your benefit. You see, everything that we do should be done in such a way. What if the purpose of ikhlas? I'll tell you, the real meaning of ikhlas is that you take your norms, your habits, and you transform them into things that are not normal. You transform them into things that no longer are normal. So what is normal for one person in terms of walking into a room, sitting down and taking out their book, that's the normal conduct for going to class, you make that abnormal in such a way, in a certain way. You change it. And how do you change it? Every time you walk into a class, every time you sit down and open your book, you recite an intention. That's abnormal. Most people don't do that. Okay? And in that way, you take what's called an adah, a norm, in Arabic it's called an adah, and you turn it into a ibadah, a worship, something that's not normal. Okay? When you rectify your intention, when you change your intention that is connected to an act, and you make that intention to do that act for Allah, you've now changed that norm into a ritual. That's what I'm trying to say. And so externally, you're doing what everybody else is doing. Internally, and we're talking about the batin, the laws of the heart. Internally, you're with Allah. Externally, you're with people, because you're doing the same thing they're doing. Internally, you're with the creator of people. Okay? That's what ikhlas does. That's what sincerity does. Okay? And that's what the laws of the heart attempt to clarify and explain to people. The importance of and how to do that. And the steps that are there, that are taken. Okay. So the format is that we'll read the book together. Of course, we can all read, but the purpose in reading is to, according to the traditional manner, is to read with the teacher. I've read this with the author himself and received permission to teach it, so we're teaching it. And so certain things, certain concepts we need to highlight, certain things we need to clarify, and we have to read this together, inshallah ta'ala. If you have questions, raise your hand, let me know. I don't understand this, I need clarification and whatnot. This book has, I'm looking on page 13, if everyone turns to page 13. Is anyone that does not have a book? One. I have one left. Oh, they have to share. I'm all out. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, so we have the table of contents here, and you get a glimpse into the, provide you with a survey of where we're going, what we're going to talk about, inshallah. Some of the chapters are a little lengthy. I mean, 3 pages or something of that nature is a little lengthy. Others are very short, 1 or 2 paragraphs. There will probably be 2, maybe 3 chapters that we do not have to cover that are specifically targeted to those students who want a particular dhikr, I'll just put it like that, particular advice on how to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Here we'll be covering general concepts, inshallah ta'ala. But for the most part, we'll read just about everything, inshallah ta'ala. The preface, which begins on page 7, you can read yourself. Today we will start with page 15. Before I begin, are there any questions about anything before I begin? Yes?
What did you translate ikhlas as? I guess
Sincerity. Sincerity. Yeah. Sincerity. Pure devotion. Yeah. Yeah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the most gracious, most merciful. Laws of the heart and introduction to the spiritual path in Islam. All praise belongs to God, Lord of the worlds, and we use God here because this book was written not just for Muslims, but for non-Muslims as well. Just FYI, but I'll use Allah because of our context. All praise belongs to Allah, Lord of the worlds. May Allah bless and grant peace to the best of His creation, Muhammad, culmination of the prophets, and to all of his families and companions, and to those who follow them in the way of completion of virtuous character. This is the path. The path is to develop virtuous character, ihsan, until the day of judgment, or day of reckoning. And so, amma ba'd. This treatise, this risala in Arabic, this short letter, if you will, concerns the jurisprudence, the fiqh, that governs the subtle world, the inner world, the batin. In it, I, the teacher, Sheikh Amin, summarize everything that is required by the student of the hereafter. Herein, this is our distinction. That some of us are students of this life. Okay? We are not students of this life. Remember, innal aish al-akhirah. The real life, the Prophet ﷺ said, is the afterlife. And so it requires that your being a real student means being a real student of the afterlife. It does not mean that you neglect your studies of this life. But it means the context of your studies of this life are placed in prioritizing your status in the next life. That's what it means. Okay? So if you go to school, then it means rectifying your intention and clarifying why are you going to school. Well, part of the reason is you've got responsibilities, and Allah Ta'ala said, fulfill your responsibilities. Part of it is that you've got bills, and Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has said, pay your bills. Part of it is that you've got to pay zakat and go to Hajj, and Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has required that you have money to do that, so you go to school to make money to do that. Like all of these things, you put in these contexts. Okay? So we are students of the hereafter. And so what does that mean? 16. Chapter 1. The states of the students of the hereafter. The first thing is to understand that we are different people. Every single student is not the same. Okay? So the way that we conduct our studies as students of the hereafter is going to be different depending on what situation Allah has put us in. Our studies in one context are not going to be the same type of studies of the hereafter as somebody in a different context. So let's talk about these contexts. 1. It is necessarily the case that the student who cultivates the life of the hereafter and the wayfarer in its path, the one that travels the path to the akhirah, will either be, 1, a pious servant. So number 1 is either the first context is somebody who's just a simple person, right? Just a simple, as we say, Joe Blow or whatever, right? Simple guy or simple lady who all they are just concerned about is they love the prayer, they have a simple life, everything's taken care of for them. They're just a pious, simple person. That's 1. 2, a scholar. A scholar, any type of scholar. It's okay. Any type of scholar. Here the context is obviously a religious scholar, but this could be somebody who is in a scholarly position. Okay, this could be the president of a university, somebody who's head of a law school, like any tenured professor, a scholar. A person whose business it is to teach and train and convey knowledge. Or a student, right? Somebody who's in school, any type of student. Right? Or a tradesman, somebody who's in business, full-time they're in business. That's their context, their status. Or one in authority, a governor, mayor, president, someone who has authority over someone else, okay? CEO, or someone who is drawn through complete faith in divine unity into the love of the one who is eternally besought by everybody, to Allah. Somebody who is just like, you meet people and they're just 100% spiritual. These people are completely drawn to the divine presence. We meet these kinds of people all over the world. We don't know how they survive. We don't know how they live, but they just love Allah. And they don't care, they really don't care about anything else. Right? They are just, like Allah just takes care of Ahmed. I don't know what Ahmed does. I don't know what that sister does. They don't work. They don't do anything. They're just in the masjid or they're just in the community, and they are just, every time you see them, they're just a wali. They're just a big friend of Allah. Like Allah just cares for them. Anytime you walk up to them, they're not here, they're there. Right? Someone who's always in the presence of Allah. Right? This is a completely different person. Okay? So these are the different students, the different contexts of different students in the hereafter. So let's talk about their studies. What's required of them in their different contexts. 1, as to the pious servant, simple person. He is the one who has restricted himself to worship, occupying himself with nothing else to such an extent that should he ever leave his devotions, he will sit without doing anything. This is somebody who, when I was a child, I used to, my father was part of a community, helped establish a masjid in Atlanta. And as a child, I used to always remember these guys who used to come to the masjid. They would be very strange guys because they would always travel, then they'd sleep in the masjid. They'd stay for like 10 days, 30 days, 40 days. And they were always talking about Islam and Muslims and everything. Then they'd get up and leave. Like right when the discussion got good, days were over, they had to go someplace else, right? These guys, and then I learned, these brothers, they're on Jamaat. Like these are brothers from the Tabligh, And there was always the brother in the masjid who seemed to never leave the masjid. It was always somebody who, when he came, he just loved the prayer, he loved the Jamaat, he loved Islam, and you could not think that this guy could take himself out of this context. His life was worship, his life was ibadah, his life was being with Allah and praying, and you could not imagine him in a different context. Like this guy's not going to get up and get a job. Right? This guy's not going to work a 9 to 5 in a cubicle somewhere. This guy's meant to be in the masjid. These guys are meant to be, for example, giving da'wah. Right? This is that person, the pious, simple servant. All they're concerned about is serving. Guys, could you cut your phone off, please, or put them on vibrate or something, please? It's really distracting. Even me, I have mine on vibrate. Okay. So this is somebody who they are who they are because of their devotion. And their devotion here is worship, their acts of ibadah. Their devotion is what constitutes, in a sense, their existence. And they're just simple people, right? What we call simple people. Nobody special with a title that does special things, simple in quotations, because with Allah, they may be very complex. So this is the pious servant. For this person, they just love prayer. That's who they are. I mean, they don't have to be Muslim necessarily to fit this category. This is somebody who loves prayer. Some of us have grandmothers like this, right? Great-grandmothers, just your old aunt or somebody who they just love. Whenever you see them, you think about prayer. Like prayer that you could have already prayed. But when you see them, is it salat time? My God, Like that's just who they are, And in that sense, that they are there as a sign for you. So this person, for that person, this book is translated as him because of simplicity. Let's not get into gender stuff here, but just for simplicity. For that person, it is most appropriate to immerse themselves fully in devotion at all times. So for that person who loves worship, and that's the way they exist, then for that human being, for that individual, their path of developing their heart, developing their relationship with Allah, their path is to sit in worship constantly. Okay. We read stories in the history books about, old sages, that pious sages and sahabas and pious people that did that. Like they prayed, 300 rakats. We hear stories about people that recite an entire juz of the Quran in one rakat for us. Like, how did you have time to do that? I can barely get ikhlas in. How did they do these things? Well, this was their path. For that person, it is most appropriate to immerse themselves fully in acts of devotion at all times and to sit in circles of remembrance. This person can sit down and sit in a circle of remembrance, i.e. do dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That person can sit and do dhikr and read Quran all day. That person can sit and do extra voluntary prayers all day and sit in the mihrab, in the prayer rug, and just sit for hours and just be with Allah. That person is entitled to do that by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's their path. As the Prophet ﷺ said, if you come across the meadows of paradise, stop and linger there. This is one of my favorite hadith. If you come across one of the gardens of paradise, take a moment for a second, sit down and relax, linger for a bit. And he was asked, O Messenger of Allah, Ya Rasulullah, what are the gardens of paradise? And he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, circles where people remember God. Circles of remembrance. This is a circle of remembrance. This is a garden of paradise. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of us. Inshallah. In the Arabic, for those of you that are Arabists, he said, halaqat dhikr. Halaqa, you know halaqa. Halaqat dhikr. This is the Arabic. Halaqas of dhikr. Dhikr here is not just subhanallah, 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 subhanallah. Yes, that's dhikr. That's not the only dhikr. Dhikr is much more broad and abstract. Dhikr means any type of halaqah in which the remembrance of Allah is primal. Okay? One of the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, his name is Mu'adh ibn Jabal, he asked about this hadith. They said, "O Mu'adh," and Mu'adh was the companion who was very knowledgeable in Islamic law. The Prophet ﷺ said, the most knowledgeable of all of you in halal and haram is Mu'adh. And he sent Mu'adh to be governor of Yemen. This is how Yemen became Muslim. It is through the teachings of Mu'adh. So Mu'adh went there. And so they asked Mu'adh, "Oh Mu'adh, what does this mean? What does this halaqat al-dhikr mean?" And he said, it's things like talking about what's halal and what's haram. He said how to pray, how to fast, how to make hajj, how to marry, how to divorce, how to buy, how to sell. That's Sharia, fiqh. He's talking, the legal rules, the laws. This is the laws of the external he's talking about. So if the laws of the external are circles of remembrance, what about the laws of the internal? What about those laws? So the internal is more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because no other human being can see the internal. Only the inner side, the heart is a locus only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not even your angels. Your angels don't even know whether you're being sincere or not. They don't have access to that. It's only for Allah. This is how this is very important. So circles of remembrance. So the point is that person is entitled to sit and linger in all the circles of remembrance, and as many circles of remembrance as they would like. Now, of course, the hadith also applies to us when we have a lunch break. If we have a few moments, we just finished salat and there's a little halaqah going there or something going on, yes, maybe we sit for a few minutes, try to get a few blessings. There's a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said that the people who gather in the masjid to remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the angels come and they write the names of the people there down. And they go and they show the names to Allah. They say, "Oh Allah, look at your servants that are in a halaqah remembering you." And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say to the angels of hadith, "Inform them that they are forgiven. On this day I have forgiven all of their sins." And then one of the angels says, "Oh Allah, there's the name of so-and-so there that just happened to be there, just happened to walk in and decided to sit down. She wasn't a part of the original halaqah, but they just came in one day And then they saw the halaqah and then they decided to sit. Ya Rab, oh Allah, what about that person? He said, announce that I have forgiven them too. It's taking a few minutes in any halaqah is very important. You never know if that's the key to your salvation. So the pious servant is somebody who spends their time in circles of remembrance, is the point. And it is that conduct that gets that person to a level where they achieve high degrees, high spiritual statuses, and they achieve nearness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Concerning the scholar, he is the one from whose knowledge people benefit. This is the key definition. From the scholar's knowledge, people benefit. So that's a very broad definition. People might benefit materially. People might benefit spiritually. Benefit by his legal judgments, his lessons, or his books, or the writings. Okay? If it is possible, spending all of his time in these pursuits is most favorable. So if it is possible, the scholar should restrict himself or herself to teaching, learning, teaching and writing and conveying information. And it is through that medium that they achieve nearness to Allah. If it is possible for him, spending all his time in these pursuits is most favorable and virtuous preoccupation after the obligatory prayers and sunnahs. After the prayers, after all of the obligations Allah has put upon us, and the sunnahs connected to those obligations, after that, the best form of action is for the scholar to go back to teaching and writing. Okay? Very important. So if the scholar has a choice between joining the halaqah of dhikr and between going back to class or joining the circle of remembrance and going back to writing, for the scholar, which one is better?
Writing.
Writing. This is part of the path, brothers and sisters. Understanding which action is best at a given time. Okay? Understanding which action is best at a given time. Because of the scholar's statute, the scholar has to understand that my writing and teaching, for me, is going to propel me closer to Allah than sitting down in the circle of remembrance. Okay? Now, why is that? Think about that for a second before we continue. Think rationally. Why is the scholar sits down and let's say goes subhanallah, 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 right? Let's say, for example, right? Or there's a halaqah of people reading Quran, they're reading a juz of Quran, right? It's better for that scholar to go teach 30 people than to sit by themselves and read or do dhikr. Now, why is that?
Because the scholar now has the responsibility to benefit the community in that way, because he has that knowledge now.
And benefiting the community takes precedence over benefiting what?
Oneself.
Self. That's the one. That's why.
So, just how do you find the balance between teaching and learning yourself?
Well, he's a scholar. He's finished learning, or she's finished learning. They're in a completely different realm. Yes, everybody still learns, but the rules have changed for them. So the moment they're sort of deemed a scholar, they're deemed a teacher, the rules are very different. So now, if they have still a lot more learning to do, then they shouldn't be a scholar. They shouldn't be in a teaching position. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Tafaqahu qabla an tusayyidu." Become a scholar in religious matters before you become an important person. Okay? Why? Because when you become an important person, you don't have time to go back and learn. Okay? Your community responsibilities will consume you, and we've all met that person who said, "Oh, I wish I had learned Spanish back in the days. Oh, I wish I had learned Arabic right when I had those opportunities. Now I'm married, I'm old, I don't have time to do this." Right? "Oh, I wish I had done this. Oh, I wish. The Prophet ﷺ said, don't be he didn't like people that I wish. Do it. He said to Mu'adh, take advantage of your youth before you get older. Take advantage of your health before you get sick. And so the scholar has to understand that a new set of requirements are upon him or her, and they have to act accordingly. If not, then they should withdraw. They should take themselves out of that position and correct themselves and go back. This is why Imam Ghazali withdrew from his post as the head educator in the Madrasa Nizamiya. This is why, one of the reasons why, because he didn't see himself as fully competent and ready to be in that post, in that position. Because he had cultivated the fiqh of an external life, so to speak, but the fiqh of batin he still had not understood correctly in the way that he himself was comfortable with. So he left. Yeah, he left. So the Prophet, very important hadith, become knowledgeable before you become important. Become knowledgeable before you become important. If you want a literal translation of that hadith, learn fiqh before you become a sayyid, a master, someone who's in a position of responsibility. Tafaqahu, learn fiqh. Tafaqahu, qabla, before, and to sayyidu, before you become a sayyid, before you become an authority figure over people. And it means become educated, highly educated, before you become someone who's already respected. You know, lest people realize that you're really not educated and they lose that respect is gone. So this is the point, because benefiting others takes precedence over benefiting himself or herself in that position. Provided, okay, so let's go back to the text. Spending all of his time in these pursuits is his most favorable and virtuous preoccupation after the obligatory and the sunnah prayers, those you never leave. Provided that the aim or the objective is assisting or helping in the wayfaring or the traveling in the path of the life of the hereafter. So, the scholar should go back to teaching and learning, provided that the intention of the scholar is to help those students cultivate a life of the hereafter. Now, if that's not the scholar's intention, the scholar's intention is to make money. If the scholar's intention is something that is worldly, then we have a different situation. Because now the scholar is doing what with his choice? He's choosing what?
Dunya.
He's choosing dunya over what? Akhirah. Now that's different. Okay? You understand? Okay. So it goes back to my original point, correcting the intention behind everything you do. If so, then that to which he aspires takes precedence over the other acts of worship. And provided his intention is correct, everything that he wants to do in terms of teaching and studying takes precedence, is more important over other acts of worship. To the degree that this knowledge awakens in the people the desire to seek the hereafter and to withdraw from preoccupation with the life of this world. Because that knowledge that he's teaching awakens certain spiritual points in people. Okay? And that is more important than the scholar taking his own personal time and being selfish, so to speak, and praying voluntary prayers and leaving people to sort of fend for themselves. Okay. Arik.
What if he's a scholar of this world? Is that the same? He's a professor of law?
Well, the scholar of this world has to, he's got an even bigger job that he or she's got to rectify their intention to become a student of the hereafter. Yeah, so this is also included in this. Now, Imam Shafi, radiallahu ta'ala, he said, he was sitting in Mecca, and he said, teaching people the religion, teaching people fiqh, is more important than praying 2 rakats voluntary prayer. Imam Shafi stated. Teaching people the deen and fiqh is more important than praying 2 rakats voluntary prayer. And they asked him why. And he said, because the voluntary prayer only benefits you, whereas transmission of knowledge to people benefits you and them. So it still benefits you. There's still a benefit that returns because you get the blessings of teaching. But it also benefits them as well. So here, the understanding is that the scholar and the teacher has to look at the net benefit of everything and calculate what's right, what's good, what's appropriate from that net benefit. Not quite a utilitarian perspective, though. A little bit different from utilitarian morality. But net benefit in terms of what's going to be the overall best benefit in the hereafter. Okay. We'll come back to it. This knowledge, the knowledge of the deen, encourages his students or her students, along the path of the hereafter, Because everybody, by default, is a student of the path of the dunya, is the point. Okay, by default. Generally, everybody is brought into this life as a student of the world. Okay? And it is only through a specific type of education that you get reoriented to cultivating a different life and to becoming a student of the hereafter. Okay. This knowledge encourages them along the path of the hereafter in place of their longing after wealth. Keep in place of that. Reputation and preeminence in society. Okay? So this is the scholar's job. Concerning the student, their intention is to gain nearness to Allah through learning. That's the job of the student. Any student. Learning, academic learning, especially Islamic learning, any type of learning. The student's path to Allah is to use their learning as a means to get closer to Allah. Okay? I will, Medina. She's supporting the statement.
She wanted to teach and study.
That's it. Alhamdulillah. Barakallahu feek. You have to think to yourself, when you go to class, how do I use my class to get close to Allah? And this thinking should not be restricted to your class. You are not a real student of the hereafter until you apply this thinking to every single sphere in your life. How do I use this car to get closer to Allah? You literally can't drive to Allah, but you can drive to Allah. You can drive to the right places with the right intention. Okay? How can I use this apartment to get closer to Allah? How can I use this test to get close to Allah? How can I use this class to get closer to Allah? Every time you have a good intention, then that class is recorded as time in the path of Allah. So this is the student. For the student, for him or her, preoccupations with their studies is more favorable, meaning to Allah, and more virtuous, you get more blessings, than spending excessive time in remembrance and other supererogatory acts of devotion. Let's read that again. Preoccupation with your studies, studying and reading with the right intention now, okay? You've already changed your intention. But now that your intention is solid, preoccupation with your studies is more beloved to Allah and will get you more blessings than spending, the key word here is excessive time. Excessive time in circles of remembrance and things like that. Why? Because that excessive time will cause your studies to be affected detrimentally. Okay? That's why. And your studies are more important. So if you've got a good intention connected to your studies, then your studies are transformed from actions that are normal to actions of devotion. That is your 2 rakats. That is your circle of remembrance when you're in that class. That's it. You've transformed it simply by transforming your intention. Right? Now everybody wants to re-register for class for the semester. And literally that's the case. However, he ought not to keep himself or herself from their litany or remembrance every day. But you shouldn't. You should not prevent yourself from the daily routines that you do in worship. For example, everyone should have some type of litany or system or pattern of things that they do to remember Allah. Even if it's as much as waking up in the morning and saying a simple dua. When you go to bed at night, saying a simple dua. When you go to the bathroom, going in, saying a dua. When you come out, you say a dua. When you wash your hands, you say a dua. You say Bismillah when you eat. Things that you do every day that involve little du'as, little dhikrs that are every day, you should not prevent yourself from saying those. Those you continue. Because they don't take a lot of time, and they keep up the spiritual desire. that you have, okay? So think of these little daily du'as. You know, everybody's got these little books now that have books of remembrance of Allah and prayers you say in the morning, invocations you say at this time. You should learn those things, okay? They're short, they're sweet, they're like Islamic spiritual daily multivitamins. They really are. Right? Take one with your meal, 2 in between meals, right? Sayyidina Aisha used to say, these daily remembrances, the system of daily remembrances, it's called wird, but it's not weird. It's called wird, W-I-R-D. It's also called hizb in Arabic. It has 2 names, wird or hizb. Now, Aisha, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, she used to say, I used to go to sleep on my hizb. She even had a daily system of remembrances, even at night. She would say, I used to go to sleep saying my hizb. Your hizb is a set of Quranic verses that you love, that you say every day. You know, there should never be a day where our teacher said, there should never be a day where your eyes don't gaze at the Quran, even if you don't understand what you're reading. Because the mere practice of putting your eyes on the Quran, the practice of focusing your pupils on the Quran is a behavioral reference of attaching yourself to the Quran. Okay. The moment you behaviorally divorce yourself from connecting to the Quran, not looking at it, not touching it, not saying it, reciting it, that will eventually translate into other actions subconsciously, and then you'll find yourself slowly but surely becoming exposed to disassociating yourself from Quranic principles, and this is dangerous. So the hizb, or the wird, the daily du'as, the daily references in the Quran, the daily invocations and litanies that you say that are from the Quran, from the hadith, those things are vitamins that keep you going every single day. And they take the place of you, for example, sitting in a large gathering and things of that nature. It also cultivates a culture and a mindset of constant remembrance of Allah. And so the student of the hereafter understands that these things you don't leave, because they're effortless and they take a small amount of time. And to keep them up is nothing. You can keep them up with take 5-10 minutes out of your day and keep them up. Yeah.
In regards to the state of the student, how does, for example, one balance the needs of the dunya with your studies, especially, for example, for students who come from less fortunate backgrounds that don't have anyone to support them in their studies? For example, they need to work, they need to support themselves, they need to pay the rent, etc. How can the balance be struck between that?
We'll get to that.
Okay.
We'll get to that. Since, however, he ought not to keep himself from his litany or remembrance every day, since these are instrumental to his progress along the way. Right? These things that you say, this hizb, the wird, the collection of du'as and prayers that you say every day, those are instrumental to you. Again, they're the multivitamin. Some of us, from a nutritional standpoint, to use an analogy, are deficient in certain vitamins. You go to the doctor, they say, you don't have enough vitamin D, you don't have enough vitamin C, you don't have enough vitamin E. So this deficiency in your vitamins is a cause for other ailments. Right? A lot of ailments, biologically and physically, can be cleared up not just through medication. A lot of times you can just forget the medication and just improve your vitamin intake. And so, analogously, your daily dhikrs and du'as that you say while walking, while driving, while eating, etc., while going to class, coming out of the bathroom, these things are boosts, right, that go into your spiritual immune system. Okay? That's why the Prophet taught them, not so we can waste our breath, but so that we can make our breath work for us. This is all the more so if he is from amongst the common folk, in which case his presence in the circles of knowledge is clearly preferable for him than spending time with remembrance. So with people like you and me, we need it even more so because of the type of company we keep, right? The environment that is around us. Okay? And so the presence our presence in these circles of knowledge would clearly be more beneficial than leaving the circles of knowledge. But we have to leave the circles of knowledge to go to class. We have to leave the circles of knowledge to continue our studies, to study and to be good students. We cannot afford to go to these circles of knowledge. So because we can't afford to spend a lot of time in these circles of knowledge, we need these daily routines, these daily formulas, these daily vitamins to supplement what we lack. Okay? So we really need it. Ka'b al-Ahbar said, one of the pious predecessors, he said, were the reward of the circles of the scholars to become manifest to people, if you could actually see the reward you get for being in circles of knowledge, if people could see that and quantify it, they would fight one another for it to such an extent that the leaders would abandon their posts and the merchants would abandon their markets. Everybody want to be in the circle of knowledge. Right. So, but Allah Ta'ala keeps it hidden for a wisdom. Okay? Because for certain people, it's better for them not to be in the circle of knowledge. It's better for them to go to class, but provided they have the right intention. Okay? And Umar said, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, a person who leaves their home and upon them are sins as great as the mountains of Tihama. Tihama are a large set of mountains that are in the outskirts of Mecca, which are known. Tihama is a region that's known for its cool, breezy nights because of the large, strong mountains that are there. So sins are upon this person as large as the mountains of Tihama, great mountains. And then when he hears a scholar, he hears the words of a scholar, reads the book of a scholar, he takes fear and repents. That knowledge affects that person, turning back from his sins and returns home without the burden of a single sin left upon them. So, Omar said, do not absent yourselves from circles of scholars. For Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not create a place upon the face of the earth more generously favored than the circles of scholars. Now you might be able to create your own circle of scholars by sitting down and reading the works of scholars. Okay? By listening to the lectures of scholars. Being in the circles of scholars means if you can physically be there, you physically go. You cannot physically be there, then, in the words of our teachers, you sit with the one who sat with scholars. And if you can't sit with the one who sat with scholars, then you read the works of the scholars. You make yourself available to their legacy in some way, form, or fashion. Okay. As for the tradesman, he is the one who engages in commerce or business in order to provide for the needs of his family. Somebody who has a full-time job to pay the bills. Simple. It is not appropriate for him to neglect his family through dedicating all of his time for worship. Now, you want to leave your job and go to a circle of knowledge and you lose income. Your family suffers, that's wrong. That's wrong. This is why the Prophet ﷺ told a group of youth, young boys, who were hanging out in the corner after Isha, and he said, "Iyyakum wal julus fit turuqat." He said, beware of just sitting idly in the street, in the middle of the road. Don't sit in the street. Don't hang out on the street corners. Do something with yourself. That's a hadith. Beware of just sitting in the road, he said. So the person who has a family, has a job, responsibilities, it is through taking care of their responsibilities and their family, it is through that medium that they get close to Allah. It is not appropriate for him to neglect his family through dedicating all of his time to worship. Rather, he accomplishes his daily devotions during his work hours. Right? He or she creates their own circles of remembrance in their work, during their work hours. How though? Through his presence in the marketplace seeking a livelihood. By being there. Your circle of remembrance is being at your job. Again, provided you have the right intention for why you're working in the first place. When you've got a family, you've got bills, you've got responsibilities. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told you to take care of those responsibilities. You rearrange your intention accordingly, so your circle of remembrance is your job. Very important to understand. Even so, you should take pains not to omit the remembrance of Allah. Where though? Within his heart. Up here. Up here, you sit and do dhikr. Up here, you do your Quran. Up here, you review your litanies, your hizb, your hadith. Up here. Why? Because what are you going to be doing with your tongue? Other stuff. This is a very important skill to develop. Right? Externally, you might be talking. Internally, you're with Allah. As a teacher said, externally, you're with the public. Internally, you're in private. You're with Allah. It's a very important skill to develop. Very important. Yes, we're in a society where we can multitask. I mean, I can talk to you in text, right? Okay, I was a lady on the road. I never forgot. I was on BQE one day driving. This lady, she was driving with one hand and had the mirror down with lipstick and was putting lipstick in traffic. It's like, how do this Yom Kippur? This woman's gonna kill half the people here trying to put lipstick on. Like, don't tell me you can't talk to somebody and still think in your mind, Allah, Allah, Allah. Don't tell me you can't do it. You can't do it because you're not used to it. You can't because you're not used to it. Don't tell me you can't have it. This is the path. People do this all the time. The business person has to develop this skill. Now they can do it because they're already business savvy. They've developed all kinds of skills, all kinds of techniques. Something done. The business person, the Prophet ﷺ said that At-Tajir al-Amin as-Saduq, the honest, trustworthy business person, ma'a shuhada yawm al-qiyamah, will be with the martyrs on the Day of Judgment. It's an incredible hadith. Do you know the reward of martyrs? Like people who die for the sake of Allah? Like, their reward? Their souls go into the bellies of birds and they get to fly around paradise all day. Yeah, I love flying Delta and American Airlines, but flying around paradise is nothing like it. So the honest, sincere trader, business person, will be with the shuhada, the martyrs on the Day of Judgment. Why such a reward? Because the business person, by nature of their trade, this is why the Prophet ﷺ really talked a lot about the business person. To go into business and to be a successful business person, I know I'm not a business person, but I tried it. I've tried a business. First thing you have to understand is tawakkul, reliance on Allah. Anybody who knows anything about business knows that's true. You cannot go into a business and be a person where you don't have reliance upon God. I'm sorry, it doesn't work. You got to rely on something, because it is a big risk. Every single day you take risks, and every day you come out with losses. And you are a person of tawakkul. You are literally in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even though you may not believe in God, realize it, or whatever. You got some tawakkul to do. And so this vulnerability, shall we say, right, this feeling of vulnerability opens up in the person a readiness to accept the remembrance of God anyway. When you've got you have nothing. You will go to work in the morning and you don't know what you're going to come home with at night, especially if you're in the market. I admire these guys coming here today. I was driving in Brooklyn and the guy is old guy and South Asian descent. He's on the corner in Brooklyn on the Ocean Parkway and he's selling. There's snow outside. He's selling cold water, and he's like out there in the street selling cold water. Now the man, I don't know, maybe he had nothing to start with, but that evening Allah will give him something. I'm sure he's not going to come back with, I'm sure he'll sell one, right? I mean, you got to admire the person. The Prophet ﷺ said that you admire the person, the best work is the work that people do with their hands. This man is out there walking the street in the cold, selling water, it's not easy to do that. High respect for that human being. Incredible tawakkul this man has to have. Now, we don't know if that person selling that water is constantly in the remembrance of Allah. Constantly. He's walking in between cars. You got to be in the remembrance of Allah. In Brooklyn Ocean Parkway, you got to be remembering. You have to be full of remembrance of Allah to go in between cars. There's crazy people in New York City. They will hit you and then take your water. Okay. So this is the path. Is the point. Right? He's not supposed to be in a masjid somewhere and it's like for hours dhikring. His halaqah of dhikr is in the street selling water, provided he's remembering Allah. That's it. Or she, for that matter. Should likewise persevere in glorifying Allah. Should continuously keep his remembrance of Allah, glorify Allah, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, I have legs to walk in the street. Alhamdulillah, I have 3 bottles of water and not 2. I have a chance to make a little more money. Constantly persevere in the remembrance of Allah, persevere in remembrance, recitation of the Quran, and so forth. In and through his heart. Keep it up here, in here. Because that tawakkul, being in that state of vulnerability where you don't know what you're going to come home with, provides a readiness for that. And it is that readiness that opens up your heart to those spiritual opportunities. And so you feel it. You feel it. And Allah Ta'ala will prove to you that it's filled by giving you risk, by giving you provision, by supporting you. In and through his heart, since it is possible to accomplish these devotions together with his work, to the neglect of none of them. Yeah, it's possible to be with Allah here and be with the people out here. You don't have to, it doesn't require a loss of any profit or anything. Nobody knows what you're thinking about. You know. And people don't care. They're in business, they care about the product, not your thoughts. Okay? So this is the path for the trades. Yani for anybody who's working full time, and this is their life, this is the point, this is their livelihood, this is the point. Not somebody who like is working and going to school and things of that nature. No, if you're working and going to school, what you're doing is going to school. You're a student, Shani. You know, you might be a person who's working full time, you know, and going to school at night. Then in that case, you're in both situations. Right? So in the daytime, you're with Allah here, and at night, you are with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in your classroom. So in that case, you combine both. Concerning those in positions of authority over the public, such as a head of state, religious judge, or any person entrusted with the public welfare of the Muslims. This is important, right? Anybody who's entrusted in the public welfare, not just Muslims, but of anybody, okay? Senators, Congress folks, anybody. For such as these, meeting the legitimate needs of Muslims and fulfilling their duties with sincere devotion to Allah according to the Sharia is more favorable, i.e. more beloved, and more virtuous than spending time in other devotional acts. If you're head of state, you're not required to sit for a circle of Quranic recitation. Okay? Your blessings come by ensuring that the people that are under your care are taken care of. That is your path. And to the degree that you are successful in that, that equates to the degree of your success and closeness and nearness to Allah. If you're a miserable failure, then you haven't a clue as to how your closeness to Allah. Whether your failure is your fault or not is a different thing. It is best for him to remain engaged in discharging his responsibilities towards the people by day, restricting himself to the obligatory and sunnah prayers. Don't never leave the prayers and all of the obligatory actions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put on us and the sunnahs connected to those, and offering his other private, voluntary devotions at night. But it may be that even in the nighttime, he's busy with the people. The point is, someone who's in that position, their responsibility and their connection and their path to Allah is through their service to the people. So you can never say, oh, I never see, Prime Minister so-and-so at Jummah. Well, I never see the mayor at Jummah. Well, the mayor's not supposed to come to Jummah. Okay. I never see the president so-and-so at Jummah. Well, maybe it's because President so-and-so is busy making sure that we can have Jummah. Okay. We all have Jummah because of their work and labor. Or I never see so-and-so at the Molid. You know, and the congressman so-and-so never comes to our halakas, our Molids, and our this, that, and the other. Well, maybe it's because through their work, they're working the back scenes to make sure that these things can continue. You never criticize people for their absence, because it might be that you are present because of their absence. With people like this, in this to this degree, okay? Like, even with our parents, we see things like this. You know, how many of our parents, how many of us never saw, like, you know, our fathers, you know, for years, at times, weeks and stuff, because they were out working, because they were making sure that we were able to go to school and have an education, and our mothers, for that matter, grandmothers, grandparents. You know, it's times I didn't see my dad for a long time. He's out working. You know? So this is the way life is, and it's like this for some people. They can't be there all the time. That's okay. They may not be there, but it's because of they're absent there, but they have a presence elsewhere. And their presence elsewhere is what is increasing their presence with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, providing they're doing good with a good intention. And that's what we have to understand. Finally, as for the one who is just completely consumed and subsumed in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, these saints, these amazing people, you know, the aunt and the uncle, that when you see them, you just think about the Kaaba, okay? That's just it. You know, you think about, like, the Sahabas. When you see my uncle must be a Sahaba. He was reincarnated as my uncle. This must be Abu Bakr, right? My aunt must be Sayyidina Khadija. She's got to be. Right? These are these people here. He is the one who does not love other than Allah. Right? If you've never met anybody like this, please make dua to Allah. Ask Allah to introduce you to somebody like this. This will change your life. Meeting somebody who loves Allah more than anything in the world, even this incredible human being, and does not fear anything other than Allah. That's a serious person to be around. And who seeks his provision from no other source. That's an incredible human being. Okay? Somebody asked me the other day, they said, you know, what would it be like to be with the Prophet ﷺ? Can you imagine? I say, no. Yani, if you really think about it, it'd be very difficult for Muslims today to be with the Prophet ﷺ. Very difficult. It's a mercy we're not with the Prophet ﷺ because we're used to our conveniences. Days the Prophet went without eating. Days he went with only certain things. And he expected his community to follow him. I mean, we have this sort of nostalgia about the Sahabas and their life and everything, and rightfully so perhaps. But you have to understand life was not easy. And they are still required to be people of faith. We get a little hurricane and we're shocked. Life happens, we go 1 or 2 paychecks, and our world is transformed. Okay? So being with a person who loves Allah more than anything, it has no fear other than Allah, doesn't care about where their provision comes from, knows it's coming from Allah, that's a different human being to be around. We are used to being around people who are not like that. Okay? So it shakes the very foundations of your soul to exist with people there are people like this every day. All over the world. No country has a monopoly on them. No tribe or group has a monopoly over these kinds of people. The Ahlullah, they're called Ahlullah. The people of Allah, they're scattered everywhere. There's some in New York City, some in Chicago, some in Philadelphia. I'm sure there's one in Alaska. There's, they're everywhere. Somebody told Habib Omar, they said, I don't believe that there's any more Ahlullah on the planet. I think this is something in the past. And Habib Omar, he said, well, if you don't believe there are no more Ahlullah, why should Allah show you his Ahl? Why should he introduce you to them? If you don't believe they exist, why should... The condition of faith is you believe first, then you get the prize. Right? Yeah? We believe in Allah, we haven't seen Allah. We believe in angels, we haven't seen them, well, we get our prize later. You believe first, then you're introduced. Okay? So this person this is who this person is. his daily devotions or her daily devotions after offering the obligatory and sunnah prayers, notice this is stable, entail the complete presence of the heart in every single state and condition. Their standards are very different. Their path is that they keep their consciousness and awareness of Allah, they keep that permanently. So much so that if they are thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as they're talking with you, and a bird flies into the window, and they go like this, oh, a bird, and they keep going, that's a sin for them. Okay? That's a sin. Their requirement, because their level is different, it's not a sin for us. Remember the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Hasanatul abrar sayyiatul muqarrabin. The good deeds of one level of people are bad deeds of a different level of people. The standards are different. The ethical requirements we have on congressmen and senators and governors, different ethical requirements we have for the common person. Why? Because their situation is different. So this person who is Ahlullah, right, person who is in the presence of Allah, their requirement is to keep that presence, is the point. To absent themselves from that presence, because that constant presence is a gift. To take themselves out of that presence is a transgression. That person. That's why you'll see these people sometimes with their eyes closed, they're not asleep. No, you think they're asleep because when you close your eyes, you're asleep. That's your situation. Don't put your situation into their situation. That's you. It's like my grandmother said, baby, you're cold. I said, no, grandma, you're cold. I'm fine. You're cold. I'm all right. Just because you're cold doesn't mean I'm cold. Just because you think I'm oppressed don't mean I'm oppressed. You know, don't project. Right? So you see people, they're quiet, humble, they're head down. They're not depressed. They're with Allah. They're in a different world. His is the highest rank amongst truthful and sincere people. This rank that this woman has, that this man has, is the highest rank that you can achieve. This is the highest rank of being constantly in the awareness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? So much so that our teacher said if you have you turn the faucet on and the water's running and it stops, the water stops, the first thing that comes to your mind is Allah cut the water off, not did I pay the bill. Allah Ta'ala cut it off. Constant, everything that happens, constant reference is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's an incredible state, but it happens. That's part of the journey. Okay? This level cannot be attained except through regular and persistent offering of the assigned litany, these daily dhikrs and routines that I was talking about. You have to do these to get you there. And it is most unseemly for the student to take pride. This is the worst conduct, that you can take pride, claiming the attainment of this degree as his own success. You can't say, I did this, I did that, I. So our teacher said the first person to say I was Shaitan. I is the madhab of Shaitan. It's the school of Shaitan. You want to go to Shaitan school? It starts with the ego, I. خَلَقْتَنِي مِن نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِن طِينٍ. Shaitan said, you created I, me, from fire. أَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُمْ. أَنَا, I am better than him. I. So to ascribe any type of gift or blessing that Allah has given you to yourself, you know, this is the dad, the stereotypical dad that tells us his son or his child, you know, I pay the bills, I keep the lights on, I educated you. How dare you disrespect me? Well, no, you didn't. Who kept your heart beating while you were at work? Who kept your boss's heart beating while you were at work to pay you? Okay. Who provides for you to have money? You didn't pay the bills. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala paid the bills. It says in the Quran, وَمَا رَمَيْتُ إِذْ رَمَى. You didn't cast the arrow when you threw it. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. Allah cast the arrow in the battle. You think you shot, you pulled the trigger and the bullet hit its target? No. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in control of everything. So always have that reference. The moment you ascribe blame to yourself, yes, you lied. Yes, I lied. Yes, I did this. Yes, I did that, I'm sorry. When it comes to bad things, oh yeah, it's all I. That's the path. Sorry. But when it comes to good things, you ascribe those only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when it comes to virtue, the doer and the owner is Allah. When it comes to vices, it's all about us. That is the spiritual path. Okay? Yes.
So, but what about there is another question on that if the good things are from Allah, but the bad things also, like the emotions and whatever you feel, are also from Allah.
But it's out of etiquette that we don't ascribe bad things to Allah. Not because we don't understand that He really is the one that put all of our emotions there and everything, but it's out of etiquette that we don't ascribe the bad choices we make to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's out of etiquette. Okay? This level, okay. And it is most unseemly for the student to take pride, claiming the attainment of this degree as his own success and slackening in his worship. Right? Among the signs of having reached this is that the whisperings no longer arise in the heart, and the notion of disobedience ceases to intrude upon it. So amongst the signs that a person has reached this high spiritual level is that the waswasa, the whisperings of shaitan, no longer enter the heart. Yes, there is a point where your heart is free of the whisperings of shaitan. It does exist. That doesn't mean you're free from shaitan. That means you're just secure from the whisperings. But he has many other tricks. He's good. But your heart is firmly secure from the whisperings of shaitan. And why? Because the whisperings are manifest in our psychologies by ways of thoughts. So our thought pattern, our thinking changes. Okay? We'll talk more about that. And the notions of disobedience, the thought about disobedience, the thought about committing a sin and things, all of that stuff ceases to intrude upon the heart. Okay? So when the mind ceases to think about committing sins, and that's a sign that the person is at the end of this quote-unquote end of the spiritual journey. Okay? Or end meaning they've reached the highest level, and then you never really end. Remember, the task is to always maintain the blessings you have. I always tell people, how many of you have been to Hajj or Umrah? How many of you have been to Hajj or Umrah? Hajj or Umrah, particularly with Hajj, a little more so with Umrah, but specifically with Hajj, the difficulty in Hajj is not going to Hajj. The difficulty in Hajj is not being at Hajj. That's not where the difficulty is. The difficulty is keeping the nur that you have when you come back. That's the difficulty. Okay? That experience you have produces or brings a certain level of blessings and nur, and you gain a station with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you go to His home, when you perform your rituals. You gain something. The trick is, when you come back, you have to keep that. That's the hard part. Okay? And it's the same thing with the spiritual development of the human being. When you do activities, when you cultivate a particular life, when you develop a certain relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not just with people, but more importantly, Allah, the real challenge is keeping that relationship. And that is the daily jihad. That's why the Prophet ﷺ said that the jihad of the nafs is harder and stronger than the physical jihad. Because the physical jihad stops. War stops. Even if it's a 12-year war. It stops. You're going to be daily trying to keep good relations with Allah for the rest of your life. Whatever life Allah gives you. Whether it's 40 years, then you're daily going to be trying to keep a good relationship with Allah for 40 years. If it's 60 years, if Allah gives you 60 years, then you got a 60-year struggle. If it's 90 years, then you've got a 90 years. Nobody in here is thinking in their mind after, I think I'll retire with Allah when I hit 50. There's no retirement package. You don't get to have this relationship with Allah and then just collect some type of spiritual social security. It does not happen. It's a daily process. If Allah gives you 500 years, if it were announced that He gives you 500 years, then we'd be in the business of cultivating a relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for 500 years. And that is ikhlas. That is sincerity. Okay? Understanding that this is what it means to be a student. and understanding what our struggle is in our particular context. Okay? So this was an introduction. It was the first chapter. We're going to go more and more and more specific, step by step, just like a buffet. We're not going to eat everything at once. We're going to try the salad a little bit, then we'll try the rice, then we'll take care of the beans. We'll sip the soup, taste the meat, have a bit of the bread. We'll go bit by bit, inshallah ta'ala. Let's end now. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون والسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله. If you have not registered for this class and you intend to take it, please register for this class. If you have a book and you don't intend to take the class, please return it. The book is $20. Please give the money to Imam Khalil Latif, inshallah ta'ala. You can cash, write a check, whatever you want. If you write a check, make the check out to the Islamic Center, NYU. If you do not have a book and you are interested in taking this class and you want to register, please register. Inshallah ta'ala. If you do not have a book, inshallah, next week I'll bring some more, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.